Dinner had always felt like a negotiation pretending to be a meal. No one ever wrote anything down. But the rules were well understood. We ate at 7 and we talked about safe, boring things until someone, usually my dad, decided it was time to talk about character. That night, the chicken was dry and the rice was a bit undercooked. Mom kept getting up for things she didn't need. The TV hummed softly in the background. A laugh track from a game show leaked through the wall like static. My brother wasn't there. But his name was. It always was. Dad cleared his throat the way he did when he was about to make a point. You know, he said, not looking at me, your brother figured things out early. Work ethic, responsibility. You could have learned from that. I kept eating. I knew better than to respond. Silence at this table was always taken as humility or weakness, depending on who spoke. Dad kept going, encouraged by the silence. You're not half the man your brother is. It didn't hit hard like a slap. It just landed like dust. Mom didn't step in. She never did at first. She just watched, waiting to see where the night would go. Dad cut his chicken, satisfied. The laugh track from the game show echoed from the other room. I felt something shift. Not anger, more like a feeling of alignment. It was as if pieces had clicked into place, a pattern I had never really noticed before. For years, I'd been paying the rent, not because they asked me to, but because I just started helping out. Then it became routine. Money went out on the first of the month. Repairs got done quietly. Late notices were intercepted before they became a conversation. I didn't mention it, and they didn't ask. It was easier that way. My contribution lived in the background like the utilities, necessary, but invisible. Meanwhile, respect was treated as something I had to earn, something that would come later. Once I proved myself by some moving goalpost I'd never quite understood. I pushed my chair back. The scrape against the tile was louder than I intended. Everyone's eyes snapped up. Dad frowned, already irritated at the interruption. If I'm not half the man he is, I said, calm, then he can start paying your rent. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stress any words. I just said it like it was any other scheduling conflict. For a moment, nothing happened. Dad let out a short, dismissive laugh. The kind he always did when he thought someone was just trying to put on a show. Don't be dramatic, he said. Sit down. Mom didn't move. Her fork hovered, frozen in midair. She just looked at me, not angry, not defensive, just pale. Rent? She asked, almost a whisper. What? Rent? The question wasn't loud. Nor was it sharp. It came from a lower place, maybe fear, maybe realization. Dad turned toward her, his patience wearing thin. He's exaggerating, he said. I didn't correct him. I didn't say anything. Mom's eyes darted between us, silently searching for the version of events she preferred. Then, her gaze shifted to the stack of unopened envelopes on the counter behind me. Notices. The things I'd been taking care of. How long? She asked, not dismissive, just factual. A while, I said. Dad's face tightened. This is family, he said, as if that somehow explained everything. You don't throw that in our faces. I almost laughed at how he phrased it. I hadn't thrown anything. I just set something down. The room felt smaller now. The rules were shifting, and no one had agreed on what would replace them. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it at first, but then it buzzed again. I took it out and glanced at the screen. A name, a property management office. I'd been expecting this call. I should take this, I said. Dad scoffed at the table. I stepped into the hallway anyway, the house creaking in protest as I moved. I answered quietly, yes, I'm here. The conversation was short, just confirmations, dates, and a reminder that the leads were under my name because my credit had been the only one to qualify at the time. The words were neutral, professional. They didn't care about pride or family drama. When I came back, no one was eating. Mom's hands were folded tightly in her lap. Dad stared at the table, his jaw set. He looked smaller that way. You put the lease in your name? Mom asked. Yes. Why would you do that without telling us? Dad snapped, finally regaining his footing, his authority coming through in the volume of his voice. An old habit. I met his eyes. You never asked who was paying, I said. You just assumed. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Assumptions had always been his thing. He was good at them. They worked for a long time. So what? He said, his tone sharp. Finally, you're holding this over us now. No, I said. I'm stepping out from under it. Silence hung in the air. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that forces a shift. Mom spoke first. Her voice soft. Your brother can't afford it. I know, I said. Not unkindly. That's my point. The whole hierarchy we've been operating under didn't account for practical things. It ran on stories. My brother was successful. I was still figuring things out. But that story didn't stand up to the facts. My father stood up, pushing his chair back so hard it made a point of it. You think money makes you better? He demanded. I shook my head. No. I think money makes things clear. He wanted to argue, I could tell. The old reflex, trying to reassert control, to remind me of my place. The places were defined by leverage, and leverage had just shifted. And it's just dissolved then? He said. I'm moving out next month, I said. You'll have time to figure something out. Or not. That's up to you. Mom looked like she might cry. But she didn't, she just nodded once as if she was filing the information away for later. Where panic could wait. Dad didn't say anything else. He didn't apologize. He didn't take back what he'd said about my brother. That wasn't the point. I grabbed my jacket as I reached the door. I paused, not for effect, but because I realized something. This wasn't a victory. It was an adjustment. The cost would be immediate distance, discomfort. It was the end of pretending we operated on mutual respect. But something else had ended to the automatic dismissal, the assumption that my role was to quietly support and absorb the criticism with gratitude. Behind me, the laugh track from the TV chimed in again, right on cue. I closed the door gently.